Welcome to the 27th episode of the Animal Riot Podcast, brought to you by Animal Riot Press, a literary press for books that matter. It's your producer, Katie, here, and this episode has been edited to reflect our new name. If you're new to the Animal Riot community, welcome, and you can find out more about us at animalriotpress.com. Now on to the episode with your host, Brian Birnbaum, and today's guest, Moses Utomi.
Here today with Moses Utomi, who has done a lot of different things for a little bit of time, but writing is his constant. When he's not indulging his restlessness by traveling about, he's being a martial artist or doing karaoke with or without a backing track, which I totally get that. You can find me walking the streets of Harlem here with our dog,
crooning.
just rapping.
That's it.
My headphones in and just like everyone just thinks I'm fucking insane.
That's
so
the way to do it.
Moses and I are old classmates, along with our producers.
Old chums.
Yep, at good old Sarah Lawrence. Yeah, actually, let's start there.
Yeah.
What did you like or dislike about the MFA program? Because we actually the episode will have aired by then. We just did an episode and we were talking about autofiction.
Oh, really?
And so we talked about there were two novels that just came out about MFA programs, and we were kind of just like, man, really? You'd write about anything, but apparently they're pretty good. But yeah, so what did you like about Sarah Lawrence?
About Sarah Lawrence, about MFA?
Yeah, either.
Yeah?
Either, yeah.
I mean...
Oh, I'm going to interrupt you off the bat
do it.
and say...
I don't need to talk.
Moses brought cupcakes for us.
Oh, man.
Which makes him the best
But
guest
he was
ever.
also late. I didn't have to say that, but I'm kind of...
No,
we confess.
honestly, your timing was perfect. I was on a very important phone call.
Okay.
But yeah. So, Sarah Lawrence.
I mean, I approached Sarah Lawrence. My background was in like genre fiction. Like I grew up reading fantasy and science fiction, and I wasn't really schooled. And I was a psych major in undergrad, so I wasn't really schooled at all.
Whoa.
In, literature.
Same.
Really?
Yeah, I was a psych. I was a finance major, and I switched to psych so I could.
Oh shit.
Not study.
You're like
practice
fuck
guitar.
money. Who needs money? Finance, psych, then writing. Yeah. So I was kind of approaching it as like, this is my chance to like, I think I know how to write, but this is my chance to like learn, right, from people who know how to write, and that happens. I mean, I was really happy with that. The level of instruction, you know how it is. The instructors are fantastic.
Yeah, the faculty there is like
you have
top
access
notch.
to them all the time. You got to really deep dive into like your own style and so many other styles and mix and match and blend and figure out what you're doing. So I enjoyed a lot of that. I think for me it was like the cons, if there was. I mean, I kind of overextended. Like I think I was involved in like student government, all the random stuff, and then grad school you got to work several jobs typically, and like
you put on those lit Cinco de Mayo parties where our producers and I met.
Really, was it?
Yeah, it's where we.
Look at me bringing people together.
Fell in love.
Yeah. So I didn't have a lot of time for like between that and then having to write. I didn't have a lot of time for social stuff, and which is you got to balance things in life. But
yeah,
that's the only side of it. And I wish I'd had more. Now Sarah Lawrence I think has like a genre track, right?
I think they do. I know. I'm pretty sure they have a speculative fiction genre now. I don't know if they have anything else.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's all you.
Yeah, I think that's all they added.
Like horror, romance, and shit. Yeah. So I mean, I wish I'd had that when I was there. That's dope that they have that. And Holland, there was a few professors who were pretty familiar with that or open to it. And then my first professor, who will not be named, was not about that life at all. At all. I turned in a short story, and he or she
they
wasn't about it. It was just like, why are there Martians in this shit? She wasn't having it. He or she wasn't having it. So yeah. But
what was it? Science fiction or?
It was sci-fi. It was a sci-fi short story. I don't remember what it was about.
So I'm actually curious. We'll interject here. Where do you? Because I actually think if they were going to add a genre, I actually really like that it was speculative fiction.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like an MFA program, it is kind of like you either go there for literary fiction or nonfiction.
Yeah.
That's like kind of like the deal, you know?
Or poetry.
Or else you kind of like stick out like a sore thumb. But like, do you find yourself like kind of between those lines between sci-fi and speculative?
Yeah. I think these last couple of years I've had to like kind of refine myself. So because after going, I mean, at my heart of hearts, I'm a snob. I enjoy being a snob. I like looking down on people, but like, and so I think when I finally that helps, right? When I finally got like properly educated in writing, like my whole life I was like, I love writing, but I don't know what I'm doing, right? And I finally got educated, and I was like, yeah, fuck, like speculative, like all that shit is for nerds. Like I'm about that real shit now. And then, but that's really not what I love. And so I spent like a year or two like reading a lot of realist or mainstream literary fiction, and it didn't have the same spark, and so I had to like go back to genre, both literary genre and more like just pulp genre, the kind of stuff I grew up reading that's really just for kids kind of, and like figuring out what I love about it.
Who are those writers?
Literary ones or the more
the ones that you liked as a kid?
I mean, as a kid, Robert Jordan, Robin Hobb, George R. R. Martin, who's now famous.
Yeah, right.
But like that kind of like sword and sorcery kind of fantasy.
Have you ever heard of a book called Magician by Raymond E. Feist?
Yeah, I was a big fan of Feist. I read that whole series.
I think I've brought that up on this podcast before.
Really?
I was obsessed with that book when I was a kid, yeah.
He's one of the titans, I feel like.
I've been thinking about going back to read that again.
It's probably good shit.
It was insane. Yeah. I remember by the end of that book, like, people, like, there were armies coming through portals. Like it was crazy.
Shit is wild. And it's crazy. I went to a Marlon James's reading out here recently. He wrote his new book is out. He doesn't need a plug from me. He's fine. But like,
our 100 million fans will hear this. So.
Give him the bump. He Red Leopard. Black Leopard, Red Wolf, whatever. He has a new book out, and he wrote A Brief History of Seven Killings, won the Man Booker. Then he jumped over to fantasy, put out his new book, and it's like legit fantasy. I'm not done with it yet, but it's like, I thought it'd be, his first book was really dense literary. And this next one, I thought it'd be like a dense literary fantasy, but it's not. It's pretty straightforward fantasy. It's an African-inspired fantasy.
Interesting.
His reading, I got to talk to him a bit about like the genre now, what it's like. And he's like, yeah, he grew up the same way, reading fantasy and cross-genre. And George R. R. Martin's kind of changed the game. Game of Thrones has changed everything, right? Where it went from like shit for nerds to people understanding that within that costume of princesses and dragons and shit, there's real stories, like serious, complex storytelling going on.
The same human emotion dramas.
Yeah, it's all the same.
Just different window dressing. So what do you think? What was the moment that you went back and were like kind of went back to your roots and you were like, yeah, why did I have this stick up my ass? You know.
I mean, there's obviously authors in between. David Mitchell, I think, is dope, right? And he kind of does whatever the fuck he wants. Yeah, I think we talked about him back at Sarah Lawrence.
Man, he just cupcakes. David Mitchell, our producer, has the last line of Cloud Atlas on her tattooed on her your biceps.
I mean, he's a genius, and he doesn't give a fuck about genre lines, right?
Yeah,
he's like, let me just write what I need to write. And so for a while, I was in that lane. I was like, this is dope, but I was like, I need to get away, move deeper into literature or whatever. And so I did that, and then I just got overwhelmed, and I read Robin Hobb, who is like in the fantasy world. She's like the OG. Like, she puts out a bookie. She writes crazy fast, and her shit is so quality. And like, when I went back to it, it's a series called I'm already forget. My brain is trash, man. I'm getting old
from your corporate job.
I know, right? It's anyway, it's her main series. People who know her will know her, but check out Robin Hobb. She I went back to read it expecting it to be like kind of for kids. I read it as a kid, so in my head that's what it was. It was children's literature. And once I started reading it, I was like, this is so well written. Like, it's so sentence by sentence, it's so sharp, and the emotion is so deftly handled that I don't know, like, I just assumed that because I'd read it as a kid it was childish, but it was just up there in terms of like sentence craft, up there with any solid mainstream literature. And that's when I was like, yeah, why am I like ignoring all the shit that got me here? Like with the books I love, why am I reading books I can't get through instead of reading stuff I love? So
yeah
that was kind of the turning point.
Yeah, so it sounds like you were trying to impress something else besides,
I don't know who. Who's impressed by me reading? We're all literate.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Yeah.
So where are you now?
Yeah, so now, I mean, I've managed to blend the two, and I've found authors who I think sit in the space I want to sit in, right? Like Ted Chang, he's written everything. He's the master, really. He's fantastic. He wrote, Arrival, the movie?
Amy Adams.
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
He wrote the short story that's based on.
Oh,
and it's
that was a good movie.
It's the short story's even better. It's wild.
Wow.
It's so, but like,
well, is it called Arrival?
It's called The Story of Your Life. Yeah.
Ooh,
and it's kind of like science fiction fantasy canon. It's just a masterwork. And seeing authors like that reminded me that I was like, yeah, I didn't have to leave this, right, to pursue something worthwhile. So I'm kind of in between now. I think my short stories are a little, I mean, so the other side of it is commercial demands, right? Like what sells, because I'm Nigerian, and so we're not allowed to be broke. That's not how it works. So like, I do have to be aware of like what I can sell. And so at first I started off writing literary fantasy that I thought was like dope and pushing envelopes and things. And then I realized that nobody wants to read that shit. So I had to like tone it down a bit.
Why not though? Because that's kind of what George R. R. Martin does.
Yeah, but
he like because I kind of see him, the way he reached everyone was because it was like a lot of people think it's like, oh, like he's got tits and cuss words.
Yeah,
but that's not it. It's like he's inside everyone's bedroom, you know, and that's like really all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing like MFA experimental stuff. So, and it's not that there's no market for that, but I think it's that all these lines are arbitrary. But I think literature is more open to formal experimentation. And genre, typically, when something feels new and fresh in genre, it's often a conceit or an approach or a subversion of tropes or something like that. So I was doing way too much, but I've gotten now to a place where I'm comfortable in a narrative voice that is plot driven with a couple formal quirks here and there when I feel like I can get away with it, but that's not, the engine of it. And then some characters that, also meaningful, substantial, rounded characters.
Did that happen at Sarah Lawrence, or has that happened like after? Because I remember this must have been a year or two ago.
Yeah.
We had dinner once, and you said you were working on a couple novels. I don't know. You always seem to be working on like a bunch of shit at once, you know? Kind of like the opposite of me. Like, in between drafts of my book, there's just a bunch of abandoned manuscripts, you know? Yeah. It's like,
you'll never go back to them. They're just not.
No. I'll never go back. But yeah, so this happened this happened after Sarah Lawrence. So was there any influence from any of the faculty there going, hey, maybe you should be going back to this genre stuff? Or did you come to that by yourself?
David Ryan, like the ghost of David, he's alive. Sorry, I didn't want to scare anyone. David Ryan's fine. But like some stuff we talked about in class became more relevant as I was going through this process. He's a pretty open-minded dude too, and he's cool with whatever. And so he was my thesis advisor. And so when we were working on that, I was kind of constrained by what the thesis was, but some of the stuff we discussed during that process came back to my mind when I was going through my own process, and it kind of helped me inform and moving back to what I love. So.
Oh yeah, okay, I see. And did you have David Hollander?
Yeah, I had him twice, I think.
You had him twice?
Did I? Maybe I had David Ryan. Grad school was 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember who had what.
The reason I ask is because his novel that we're publishing.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely has a lot of those, like, I would say it goes past speculative, it's like there's sci-fi, but it is literary at its heart,
Yeah.
But I do find it interesting that the MFA program really is like this high-minded institution, you know what I mean? And I think there does need to be, I mean, you look at people that are self-publishing on Amazon and stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost always genre, And yeah, okay, so us, we want to publish literary stuff.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it is kind of disconcerting when people go to these programs and they get persuaded to do something that makes them feel like they should fit in or something like that. Even though the faculty is amazing and like, but there's a lot of talk about this craft. There's a lot of talk about truth and beauty and language and
memory,
all this stuff that personally I care about.
Of course.
But, if I didn't, then I'd have a problem, But yeah, so what are you tangibly working on now? And like, and kind of like, what are your like tangible pursuits and where are you with all that stuff?
So there is an entire robust and beautiful short fiction market for speculative fiction. It's one of the biggest differences, I think, between the speculative fiction marketplace and the literary one is that you probably can't make a living depending on what part of the world you're in, but you can do really well just selling short stories. There's a lot of pro markets and people read them, which is, I think, a big difference
to
with
who?
The literary world. There's the big ones are like Clark's World, Fireside Fiction, which shout out to them for publishing my short.
Nice.
Clark's World is a major one. Lightspeed, Strange Horizons. There's so many. Faya. It's speculative fiction for diasporic voices, African American,
okay, cool.
African and Caribbean. they're doing great work. There's so many of them that are killing it, and they pay really well. They pay professional rates
Because more people are reading it.
because people read it. Yeah, that's the thing is like, and that's the difference with a lot of mainstream literary journals, that they make a lot of their money from submission fees, right? Like paying to submit.
It's like a Ponzi scheme.
It is, because nobody's reading it. Like if you had something people wanted, you could sell it, but it's a different world. There's a lot more of it too. Whereas speculative fiction, it's a smaller community. So I've been cranking out short stories. A few will probably be polished in the next couple of months, and I'll be sending those out. And then I'm working on a novel, of course.
Yeah. Is it the same one we were talking about back in the day?
No. Yeah, this is
because you were getting some interest from agents. You decided to.
Yeah. So that first novel, that was before I'd gone through my whatever process, and it was sitting more on the side of literary than I was comfortable with. So it was getting more attention from literary agents than speculative fiction agents.
Interesting.
And so I had to do.
I remember having that conversation with you. Yeah, it's coming back to me now.
I kind of had to figure out like, well, is that what I want to be? Is that the space I'm more comfortable in? And so that's why I was like, let me put this on hold and see what I can put out.
That takes a lot of guts, man.
Or stupidity.
If I had an agent knocking on my door, I'd be like, "What? I don't care. I don't care what the fuck I am."
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I think you convinced us. I think we just pivoted away, and now we're a fantasy press because we're gonna make $1 billion.
That's where the money's at.
Yeah. So if it happened after grad school, did going to China have anything to do with it? Is that by chance where you kind of came to terms with yourself?
A little bit. It was honestly more coming back. Coming back. Yeah. There's something about, like, I'd lived in Asia before. So I lived in Thailand when I was a baby, when I was like 20 something years, decades, centuries ago. But yeah. And so in a weird way, Asia was very comfortable for me. And so I actually felt free to do whatever. It's when I came back that I felt I got like a more practical kind of lens, and not practical in like a limiting, like disappointing way practical, but in like in terms of a career, right? Like what would a writing career look like, and where do I want to enter from, and who do I want my peers to be, and all those things. Whereas in China, I was just like, the world is, it's my backyard. I can do whatever I want. And I did. I got so much creativity out there, but it wasn't focused. It was kind of all over the place.
Was there a literary scene out there?
There was, I'm sure. I mean, you mean English literary scene or Mandarin?
Well, obviously there's a Mandarin one.
Yeah.
I mean, just I guess the better question would be, was it visible? Like, were you? I mean, can you read
Mandarin?
Yeah. Not really.
Not well.
Yeah. So it was hard to kind of.
Yeah, I'm probably better reading it now too. I practice more now than I did when I was there. So I mean, yeah, there's Chinese literature is totally fine. They're doing great. English. So I was in a town. They call it they have their cities in tiers. So there's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc. down to like tier 6 or 7.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. Shit on all the low tier cities. So like tier 1's like Beijing, Shanghai, right? Mm-hmm. I was in a tier 3 city. So like it's not
bad.
Well, I mean, to Chinese people, they're like, "What are you doing out? Why are you out there?" Like that's like Kentucky for them. They're like, "What are you doing out in Topeka?" But it's a 7 million person city. But I think the difference is that
Kentucky.
Fuck Kentucky. Offense meant. Just kidding. I don't know anything about the state. Yeah, so there was a literary scene in the tier 1 cities, right? I mean, it's a city like New York, right? You got everything. But I think when you get down to tier 3, I'm sure there's a literary scene, but it's quite a bit smaller, and I don't know if there's an English literary scene necessarily.
I mean, that perfectly mirrors here too. Yeah, we've talked about that a lot on this podcast. We did like a rabbits on the road sort of thing.
Oh, nice.
We went to a few cities, especially Little Rock, Arkansas.
Really?
And yeah, it does. It gets tough. The smaller it gets, the tougher it gets. The more distanced you feel from the resources, like to attain the goals you really want to attain.
Yeah, it seems so possible here in New York.
Yeah,
it seems so like you could write a book and get published and do whatever. But when you're out in place that doesn't have that support, it's got to feel different,
even though it's not nearly that easy.
That's really not.
Yeah, so I am really interested in this like this link between finding your voice, as it were, and your experience traveling, especially in China, just because I'm kind of interested. Were you writing a lot there? Because I know you were. What was it? Kickboxing? You were like an amateur kickboxer there.
Yeah.
Were you getting paid for that?
Yeah.
I forget if you said you were.
I was, which doesn't make any sense because I'm not good. Like it's crazy. I mean, there's so many people out there and there's so much money out there that you get paid for things that you probably wouldn't get paid for in the States.
Interesting.
Right? Like, I think so I was on...
Despite despite how many people are there.
Yeah. It's why, I mean, also I'm a Westerner. I don't want to pretend that doesn't come with privilege, right? Like, there's plenty of people growing up in China who are struggling and will be struggling for a while. And I just waltz in and I get certain privileges. But there's just a lot of people. Like, I fought my first fight. It was like a really amateur, like really, really amateur fight. And it's like there's like a video.
Like a pig
on
was
like,
the referee or something.
I mean, it was well done. That's the thing. Everything out there is so well produced and well polished. Like you go to like children's talent shows, and the stage is like gorgeous. It's like 10-foot high, like lights and fireworks. It's ridiculous. And so the fight was really well produced, but like it's a bunch of amateurs, and the video of it's like a 6-hour video on this like YouTube offshoot, some Chinese version of that, and it got like 10 million views in a week. Like. They, like,
so
you're
like Chinese famous.
No, that's the thing. I'm not, because everything gets 10 million views. There's a billion people, like right. There's almost 2 billion people. Everything gets 10 million.
There's
views
there's like a multiplier rule. On
there
YouTube.
Really is.
Yeah. Okay, I see.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah, they can afford to pay you, right? Because sponsors you're being seen for. Yeah. So yeah, it's wild.
So yeah. So were you writing when you were doing all this stuff?
I had a really good setup out there. So I worked about 25 hours a week, and then
yes, that's pretty good.
Yeah, super sweet. So I had plenty of time to write.
Yeah.
And I would write first thing when I woke up, and then I would write after work often, because I'd work during the weekdays. I worked like 4 hours, 3 hours a day, and so I'd go to work at 5-ish, and I'd be done by like 8 or 8:30. And so I go to a cafe right after work, write till like 11, head home and hit the hay, and then I don't start the next day until 5 p.m. again, so I can chill, whatever. Yeah. So I got a ton of writing. Yeah. So I finished the manuscript. I finished 2 drafts of it. So when I went there, I finished the manuscript when I got there. Then I started a new book while I was there and finished that too. I had quite a bit of time. And so, yeah, it wasn't bad.
That's crazy. 25 hours a week plus
it
writing.
Didn't make any sense.
Getting to kickbox.
Yeah.
Why'd you come back?
I have no idea, man. No, I had a novel, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna bring it back.
No, you got the shit kicked out of you, didn't you?
I got knocked out. I fled so I wouldn't get jumped.
Embarrassed. You can't set foot there ever again.
Right, I'm banned. Yeah, my brother, he was pursuing the acting. He's an actor, so he was pursuing Broadway. So I was like, well, I want to publish a book. He's like, I want to get on Broadway, so he came out here.
Yeah, that's right. I remember now. You guys were living together when you first. Is that still going on?
No, he's killing it. He's in Hamilton. He's on Broadway.
You're shitting me.
No, he's on tour right now. He's in Baltimore.
Oh my God.
That's
amazing.
He's a genius. He booked it super fast. So
wow. But yeah, I feel like I kind of took us off course. So like, where are you? Like, what are you working on? And like, what?
So what's your
goal?
I'm working on. So it was again, because I was thinking about like, what do I actually know and love? And I was like, I love my culture. I'm Nigerian, so I love my culture, my background. I love my family.
Are you first generation?
I am.
Yeah.
And I love combat sports. I like fighting. So that's what I'm writing. So it's an African-based or African and South Asian inspired fantasy.
Interesting fusion.
Yeah, and it's basically like the tournament arc in anime. It's a bunch of characters who train and they're fighting, and kind of the fate of they live in these little families, and the fate of their family is on the line in this tournament. So
ooh, that's like Mortal Kombat meets Hunger Games kind of shit.
I'll let you pitch it. I've been struggling. That was way better than the stuff I've come up with.
Damn, I just got the comp titles.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah,
is that the main thing you're focusing?
Yeah, that's what a lot of my focus is. So I've divided my writing between space. So like when I'm on the train, I write short stories just because my voice feels different in motion.
Yeah, you mirror the sort of allotment.
Yeah. And
that's
then
cool.
When I'm at home or on the weekends, I find a place to sit and I write the novel.
So yeah, you sound similar to me in the sense of the time you put into it, but I'm curious. I think every writer is curious about this, about how they approach the craft.
Yeah.
Is this one of those things where you premeditate when you're going to write and how you're going to write, or is it one of those things? For me, it's more like I feel like I don't have to worry about it because it just happens. Like I don't know.
You have to.
Maybe it's that. I was actually just talking about this yesterday. I like the question of like, why do you write?
Yeah.
It's almost it's a self-serving. It answers itself.
Yeah.
Is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
The writer is groping for words. No, I mean, like, seriously, I couldn't tell you why, because it feels so axiomatic to me. But yeah, I don't know. Do you have a schedule?
I've tried.
A routine?
So I think I just habituate pretty quick. So like there was a while where I was writing, like as soon as I got home from work, I'd write. That was like my routine, and I'd write for an hour.
Even from this job now?
Yeah, even from, it was...
Because I'm imagining you come back in China, coming back with that, your robe still open, gashes across your chest, crack in your glasses. Time to write. Leg kind of hurts. Your feet are in like an ice bath or something.
That wasn't happening. Actually, that I do find that really actually, when I was training out here when I first got back, because I had more time and I was still hopped up on testosterone. And it's actually the perfect time for me to write is after like training hard. My body's just exhausted.
No,
my
I can
mind's
imagine.
like, let's do it. Let's get to work.
And you kind of cut through the bullshit, right?
Yeah. Cause you don't have time. Your body's like, look, do this shit and get to sleep. Like, we're tired. So I've tried different routines. For a while I was writing right after training. For a while I was writing right after work. But I find that like after like 10 days, something about that routine gets weird and old, and I just can't get back in the groove. And so I got to switch it up. And so sometimes I set routines if I feel like I need to, hit a milestone. Like I need to get this chapter done or this arc done or this act or whatever. But most of the time, like I can't go, I'll always write. It's kind of like what you said. Like I'll write. I'm just going to. I can't go 2 days, 3 days without writing.
Right. And I can relate to that too. And I think where a lot of writers go astray is when they set up a routine and then they beat themselves up when they don't stick to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like a routine's it's like a paradox. It's almost like a routine is great up to the point where it's flexible. And once you hit that point where it's not flexible and it's rigid, you can see it on the page. Your shit just becomes boring because it's tedious. You're just going at, you're forcing yourself to go at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have the answer to the other side because like I do feel like it's hard for me to relate to those writers who say like I really want to write, but that writing sucks and it's so boring. Like, you know what I mean? It's like I don't really understand it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I get that in the sense that for me, writing often does suck, but I don't.
It gets to the point where it has to. If you want to get published, it does.
Exactly.
Especially when you're to the point where you're not creating so much as refining or editing.
Yes.
That's where it turns from a vocation into a profession.
It's
work.
It's work, and it's not great work. It's easier work. It's much better paid, easier work. But yeah, I find it for like when I do use a routine, I find it's useful for first drafts when I need to crank out the ideas, right? That I mean, just get the messiness on paper. I do find routines very useful for that. But then after that, it's a lot of it is writing away from the desk, away from the computer, right? It's walking around and having the characters kind of solidify in my mind and having motivations make more sense and living in the world a little longer before I actually sit down and refine it. But the refining it's not the fun part always. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. It really is. It almost
I mean, you worked on your novel for a year. How long?
6 years.
Fuck. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were gaps,
Yeah.
and that's when I started writing those other manuscripts that I ultimately just abandoned,
Yeah.
But one other question I have for you is, I don't want to say that I think people should avoid kind of that. You said you felt like you were kind of going away from your roots a little bit when you got into the MFA program.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily see that as an inherently bad thing.
No.
Everyone's got to find something their own way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, efficiency is cool. Everyone likes, if you can be more efficient, that's great, right? What would you advise people that are trying to get into MFA programs, which can be haughty and, lofty and, all those words that we know kind of associate with that institution,
Yeah.
but they actually want to write their shit that's not literary, I mean, like as a literary press, I think one of the most important things we can do is advocate for any other sort of press. I mean, if like you just said, there's probably more people reading fantasy and science fiction than literary fiction. I think we all know that, know. I don't know, I don't want to say like, is there anything you would have done differently? But like, is there something maybe you can like a token of wisdom you can kind of provide people that want to write mystery or crime thrillers or sci-fi or blah blah blah?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would do anything differently. I mean, other than the financial burden of an
Sarah
MFA
Lawrence,
program, right? Like if you can get a vested MFA program, it's a great time, like to spend 2 to more years of your life doing nothing but writing and thinking about writing and learning from other writers. For genre, specifically speculative, there's a lot of great workshops and residencies type things you can do, right? Clarion is the big one, and there's others my brain isn't thinking of, but you can go away for a week or 2 weeks and spend time with some of your favorite published writers who really have careers, and they'll give you wisdom. I'm in right now a science fiction fantasy mentorship program where they pair you up with an established writer, and you get a.
So you're a mentee.
Yeah. I don't
okay,
shit.
cool.
I can't mentor anybody.
I'm feeling very mentored right now. I just want to be looked down upon, and mentored.
That's what I'm here for. Yeah, I mean, for genre writers, I think there's a lot of other channels other than MFAs. I know there's more and more MFAs now that are offering some sort of speculative track. Obviously, I haven't been through one, so I don't know if that has more.
Would
or
you
less
have chosen
value.
that one if you'd gone?
Yeah,
I would assume so. I actually think it's really important, and God, this is like there's like a running theme of like a few things we always bring up on this podcast. One of them is the Sergio de la Pava and Susanna de la Pava crime family. It's
very specific.
They're like our first literary family. Oh. We love them to death. I also always bring up this book called Sapiens.
Yeah, Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah,
I love that book.
You've read it.
I'm working on an essay right now that involves some of the ideas from that book. Yeah.
Oh my God, I fucking love it.
I love it,
dude. If you want eyes on it before you start sending it out, please send it to
sure.
me. I want to read it now. No, he's like my main man, and no, I mean, like I really agree with him when he says the most important art form right now today is speculative fiction, just because we are at this we're at this turning point where. Like algorithms are like taking over our lives, you know, and if we don't understand that and we don't understand what they're capable of, then we're in deep shit, you know.
100% agreed.
So I'm really glad you're writing about that. That's awesome.
I love that book. I got to read it again. I read it twice.
Yeah. So I guess before we get a little reading from you, and our 100 million listeners get to hear the brilliance of Moses Utomi.
Hold on to your seats.
I'm really curious because you have this like corporate day job, right?
Yeah.
And like for me, I mean, I do in a way too, but it's different because it is different working from home.
Yeah.
Because I get to set my own schedule. It's easier to get shit done, honestly, when you don't have people badgering you and like around the office and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I'm more interested in is also just like. You say you come home and you write. Is the job soul sucking at all? How do you deal with that? Because I think a shit ton of other writers want to know the same thing. They want to write and they try. There's one of two options. You get up before work and write. Yeah. And I would say like probably 80% of the world is like, go fuck yourself.
Nah, it's not happening.
Yeah, I'll shoot that rooster in the face.
Yeah.
What? Oh, our producers are like, I said 80% of the world.
So there's 20% of people.
Yeah, the 20. You represent the 20%. You're the minority.
Yeah.
but then that leaves you with the option, unless you only want to write on the weekends. It leaves you with after work. And honestly, for me, it's just like, oh my God, when I'm done working, I'm like, this is tough.
I mean, I think it depends on the job for sure. I write a lot at my job, but it's nonfiction writing, right? So my fiction brain feels untapped. And in a way, it almost like it's like poking the bear, kind of, right? Where it's like I'm sitting there writing true things about real people, and my brain is like, yo, but what if Martin Luther King, right? Like. Just I want to change shit up, and so when I go home, like,
what
yo,
if
I
his
can write
dream
that.
actually fully
right?
Came
Yeah,
true?
like we did have racial equality. What would that look like? So, like, in a way, it fuels me, and I mean, it's good because I'm refining my actual writing. Right,
Yeah.
Writing is writing. At the same time, though, I'm not using that part of my brain that needs to create original things or whatever, or the stories that I really want to tell. And so I don't know. It depends on the person too. I come from a big ass, I have 7 people in my family. So I always had to write as after leaving something, like moving into my own space to write. And so it feels very natural for me to have my time and energy consumed in one place. And then I have to kind of squirrel away time to write.
So do you also get kind of a surge of energy when when you're alone? Just because it's kind of like relieving in a way?
Yeah, it's really, as soon as I sit on the train, like, on the way to work, I read, but as soon as on the way back home, as soon as I sit down, I have all these things that need to get out of my fingers. And I that time between, it's like a 40-minute train ride and it passes in like 5 minutes. Like I'm just cranking out words and then I'm home.
Shit, I really need siblings, man.
Good for you. And bad for you.
No, I probably take my alone time for granted. Yeah, let's do a reading.
Read? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Let's do a reading.
I'm going to read this is what I had published in Fireside Fiction. They are a fantastic publisher based here in New York. They pay their writers really well. That's one of their values. One of their missions is to pay writers what they deserve. And they put out these gorgeous collections with great artwork, and they're big on they really value representation and putting out voices that haven't been heard. So I like to give them a shout out when I can, and they published me, which was ill-advised, but I appreciate it.
Is it both print and online?
Yeah, print and online. So it's online. Go to firesidefiction.com, and they have a ton of stuff, a ton of content for free online, but also support them. You can find the links online. I'm trying to find, shop. Go to the shop, subscribe, and they'll be hooking you up with regular, fantastic content.
Very cool.
So this is a short story called The Story of a Young Woman. It's a fantasy little snippet, as we discussed with genre. And here we go. Am I good to start? Do I need to mic check?
Go for it, yeah.
Turn my headphones up.
More snare.
There's a story we first began to tell long ago, before the time of your great mamas and their great mamas before them, before the queens of the kudu, before the ascendrans. A story of gain and sacrifice, a story of words that give life and whispers that kill, a story that will hollow out your heart and fill it, tear your spirit at the seams and mend it whole. The only story you'll ever need to hear. Gather around, for this is a story of unlikely beginnings, about a babe born of the Osangpo, Obas of Talking Mountain, and smallest tribe of the Adobe. She was born stuttering in a barren diamond quarry, feeble as failing light, but with eyes like smoldering coals. She was fated to die that same night. Yet she disobeyed death, and grew and grew and grew. This is a story of fear. Even as a child, she knew that she wasn't like the other Osangpo. She was dragon-marked, claimed by the gods of fire in a tribe sworn to the gods of the earth. There was fire in her belly, and flames leapt from her mouth when she laughed. Love came only from her father. He protected her from the barbed tongues of her schoolmates, from the men who hurled stones and the women sly with poisons. When she cried, he held her, and when she stuttered, he was patient. And when he fell ill and died in her 15th year, she was alone with just a belly full of flame. Gather round, for this is a story of power. She learned that she was not cursed, but in fact blessed, and she embraced her blessing. The fire in her belly straightened her spine, gleamed behind her eyes. It lined her tongue, scorched the stutter from her lips, kissed her words, and carried them like smoke to fill whoever she spoke to. As she grew, her words earned her reverence. On the day of her womanhood, the Osangpo who had so hated her chose her to be speaker of Talking Mountain, where she would speak for all tongues lost. This is a story of love. The young woman's love for her people, her love for her ancestors, her love for a young man who could be any shape and yet always chose to be kind. He would walk a dozen miles each morning to sit with her at the foot of Talking Mountain, and he would change into anything he could to make her laugh, and her laughter would warm him the way two cold hands can warm each other. This is a story of betrayal. The young woman's mother remembered the young woman as just a stuttering babe, a powerless thing. The mother could not speak as powerfully as the young woman, but she could whisper. When the couple was wed, the mother went to her new daughter and whispered cold into her mouth. It slid down the young woman's throat, past her chest, into her belly, where it turned the fire to stone. With the fire gone, the villagers, like wild animals, attacked. They had never loved her, only feared what she was capable of. The Osangpo beat her and the young man alike, tore their skin, pounded their bones, destroyed their home, and set fire to their corn. Sit and be merry as I tell you a story of hopelessness. The young woman and her husband fled the village. He took the shape of a large ram with the legs of a zebra, and she sat atop him as they crossed the land in search of somewhere better. Sand blinded them, storms befell them. Jackals gnashed their heels, and her prayers to her gods of fire went unanswered. One day the young man's legs buckled and he collapsed. He was exhausted and sick from drinking unclean water. The young woman carried him for 10 days before he died in his sleep, with his head against her belly, shivering. Close your lips and open your hearts for this story of a young woman who traveled the known world in search of her place, and the stone in her belly that was not a stone, for cold can never fully extinguish a flame, but was instead a seed. This young woman with unquenchable life within her, who after months of being cracked and dry, finally crawled into the unfamiliar land of the Vespami, governors of the endless lake, most powerful of the western houses. How could she know the Vespami worshipped the gods of water, and were sworn to slay all those dragon-marked? How could she know how much her dignity would be diminished, how fiercely they would hunt her? How could she know that her greatest pains were yet to come? Thus begins the only story you'll ever need to hear. Listen now as I tell you this saga of triumph, this most ancient and perfect of tales. She lived. That's it.
Ooh, that was dark as fuck for a second.
I tried, yeah.
You know what's funny? The first thing I thought when you started reading was like, you didn't scrub the literary off of you totally, you know?
Yeah.
Like the language is still really just like, it's really eloquent.
Thanks.
Really eloquent.
Yeah.
Women sly with poison. I love that phrase. That's
you.
great.
That was for you.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to read that again. I'm a much more visual reader, but yeah, that was great.
Thanks, man. Thanks for letting me read it. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, of course. When did you get that published?
A while ago. That was 2018. Almost this time last year, I think. Last summer. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
And you got paid for it.
It's ridiculous.
Beautiful.
I know.
Well, that's it. I guess it's official. We're going sci-fi now. Alexa just chimed.
Yo, you
Alexa
should do a podcast with just Alexa.
Alexa just chimed in and said, "I don't know about that. I don't think y'all can pull that off."
Alexa's got opinions.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So your manuscript,
Yeah.
you're drafting.
Mm-hmm. So I finished the first draft in February, and this second draft is killing me. The first draft took me like 3 months. Like I cranked it out 2 months. I sped through it, and it just all worked. Of course, it didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah. So now I'm really going in and putting it together.
So when you draft, are you the kind of person that kind of prints it out, looks at what's going on, and just rewrites it on the side, or do you kind of like work from within?
It depends on how close it is. If I feel like it's a bit of a mess, I'll just rewrite it.
Yeah.
But if I feel like there's some things keepable, I'll print it out and read it and go line by line before I start to rewrite. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What about you? Are you the same?
I'm a fucking mess.
Well, your book is huge too. You don't want to spend $1,000 on printing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. My first draft, I totally chucked. Our producers are handing over an arc, a galley, as they say.
I'm putting you on the spot.
It's up to our. if you review it.
All right, I got you.
Oh man!
Dope.
Wow.
How did it end up? How many pages are we at? 390?
Yeah, is it something like that? Yeah.
Stuff get cut. I feel like it was like. I feel like when he talks about it, it was like
it was
pages
pretty
in my head.
long. Yeah, it was at one point like it was over 200,000 words. Yeah. But yeah, I'm the kind of writer that I mean like when I was younger I vomited a lot and then I would clean it up.
Yeah.
Which sounds like more literal than it actually is.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I mean I feel like as you grow, you can recognize more quickly what's shit and what's not.
Yeah.
And then it becomes more of a problem of like finishing sentences than chucking a bunch of shitty ones onto a page, you know. But yeah, I kind of do want to before we sign off, I kind of want to hear a little bit more about your experience in China because we didn't really
For sure.
get into that too much.
Yeah.
Like why did you go over there in the first place and like how the fuck did you end up kickboxing?
So it's quite a story how I ended up there in kickboxing. So I'd gone to Thailand before I went to the MFA program. And so I loved it, obviously. Then I was like, let me pursue writing. And so after that, I was like, all right, well, I could either be broke here or I could be broke somewhere else. So I was looking around. I was going to go to Brazil. I just couldn't find like a decent job that I also felt was safe. You know, I don't want to give my mom a heart attack any more than I do. So I just saw a job in China and the timing lined up and I was like, all right, let's do it. So I just went and that country is amazing. It's like, it just feels very big. It feels huge. There's so many people and there's so much happening and there's so many different kinds of things happening. It feels like a pinball machine and I enjoyed it. I mean, when I first got there, it was awful, actually. It was horrible. Yeah, I really regretted it. It was the worst decision I'd made. I was super intimidated. I didn't leave my hotel room for like the first 3 days because I was just scared.
Shit.
I was like, I don't speak the language, and they don't think it's cute at all. Like, nobody's amused by my foreignness.
Yeah.
Thailand, they're like, oh, like, it's in America. He doesn't get it. They don't expect you to speak Thai. It's a small country. They get it. China, they're like, yo, get your shit together.
Yeah, like
you
we
speak Mandarin?
represent like 1/7 of the world.
Yeah, it's 2017. Fucking learn Mandarin. So, yeah, I was intimidated at first, and people there, especially it's a bit dog eat dog. You learn a lot. I feel like in school you learn that China's collectivist. That's like the first thing they teach you, right? They're like, everyone cares for everybody. It's family. It's not like that. No, it's very dog eat dog, and everyone's really mean to each other. And I thought it was just me. Yeah, I thought it was me. I was like, fuck you guys. Like, you guys are so mean. I'm a guest. But like when the longer I lived there and I made friends and I realized like first of all, they're not mean in the way I thought they were. Yeah. And also, it's not me. It's a different way of communicating. It's a different way of advancing your opinions.
Is it more blunt? Is that what it is? Like how did it come off as mean? What was underneath? what was the truth underneath the meanness? You know?
I mean, I'm on this fine line of like, I don't want to exoticize, and I don't want to like diminish what it is. I want to portray it as it is, and I don't pretend to have a full understanding. I'm not the scholar in China, right? But part of it was meanness, to be real. Like, it's in the same way that New York is more mean than like, Oklahoma maybe, right? Like
the Midwest or
part
something.
Part of it's big. There's a lot of fucking people. There's a lot of shit to do. You gotta go for what you want. Get the fuck out
of my way. Yeah.
And part of it was things that a different sense of what's rude or inappropriate, right? Like, people stare there. It's just they'll stare at you. Old dudes will stare. I almost got in so many fights with old dudes. I was yelling at old dudes like a fucking psycho in the middle of the street, challenging them to duels and shit. And, that's just how it is. And so when I was there as a foreigner, initially I was like, is it because I'm black? Is it because I was dating a girl out there? Is it because they don't like, me dating like
an interracial thing?
Yeah, I was like, it was always threatening. I was always like, fuck, this could pop off. Like, I don't know what this staring means. And eventually I was like, oh, they just stare. Like, it's not me. They
stare at interesting things.
They just stare at people. Yeah, like, oh, that's cool. I want to look at it. And I'm going to look at it. And
interesting.
So things like that, I had to get used to that. There was some people that were just dicks. I mean, the cleaning lady in my building, she, somebody dropped a glass bottle somewhere in the hallway. And I woke up at like 6 a.m. because I heard glass like by my door. And I went outside and she was just sweeping it all right in front of my door.
Oh my God.
And I looked at her and I was like,
are you
why?
for real?
I said it in Chinese. I was like, why? And she's like, it's yours. And I was like, the glass? Like, I was still drowsy. I was like, the glass is mine? Like, what are you saying? She's like, it's your glass. And I was like, lady, no, this isn't okay. You can't just do this to people. And she got mad, like took it away and walked off. Yeah, there's people that were not nice, but there's a shit ton of people. I mean, it's New York. There's a lot of mean people in New York too. So that was, I think, once I figured out I'll be okay, it was a lot nicer. And I got in with a good group, and I've always done martial arts on and off. So there was a Muay Thai gym right by my place, and one of my friends was going there. So I went, and so that's where I started training. And it was good. I was just kind of doing it for exercise. And then one day the coach came in. He's like, hey, do you want to fight? And I was like, no. And then one of the other dudes I was training with, he was a younger guy, and he was cocky. He's like, yeah, he's British. He's like, I'll fucking fight. I don't give a shit. Fuck. And so I was like, well, if this idiot's doing it, yeah, I'll be all right. And so we started training for the fight, and then I fought.
Was it with each other or other opponents?
We had a full gym, so there was a few other people training.
Okay,
It was me, him, and maybe three other people. So yeah, we just trained. It was like a 6-week training camp. It was great. I was training like 5-6 days a week, real hard. And then I fought, and I won my first fight. And so they said, if you win, you might fight again, which is a pretty weird thing to say without giving like specifics. And so they were like, yeah, you got to fight. After I won, they're like, all right, you'll fight again next week. And I was like, okay, cool. You should have let me know a month ago, but that's fine. So then I fought again the next week at like super early. It's like 11 o'clock. The last one had been like 7 or 8 p.m. And so I fought at like 11, and I was like, that's crazy. Like, it's just in and out like that. It's dope. And they're like, oh, you'll have another fight. Like, after my fight, like, you have another fight. I was like, okay, when? They're like, give it a couple hours. I was like, what? And so I had to fight again. And I hadn't eaten breakfast that day because, like, I didn't know what the schedule would be like. Nobody told me anything. And so I had to fight again.
Is it like knockouts, or are they any?
It was a tournament. Nobody fucking knew the word for tournament. They just asked me if I wanted to fight. And I was like, do I have a choice? Like, what is going on? And by the third fight that day, I realized, like, oh, this is a tournament. Like, there's brackets. Just I guess nobody, I don't know if they organized or whatever. Nobody told me. And so I just thought, like, each time I fought, I was like, oh, finally, I can rest, I can eat. And then they'd be like, oh, fight again. And so, yeah, it was a fucking tournament.
Did you get paid for that one?
I did, yeah. So,
and did you know you were going to
get
paid?
I didn't know anything. I didn't know literally nothing they told me. The little things they told me were all incorrect. And they didn't tell me most of it. I didn't know anything.
Oh,
I didn't know who I was fighting. I didn't know the rules. I thought in traditional Muay Thai, you're allowed to knee. There's a whole clinch factor to it. And I thought I was they said you're only allowed to knee once, and then you break the clinch. It's a different rule set. There's a lot of different kickboxing rule sets. And so the first fight, I kneed once, and I pulled off, and the guy kneed me back twice, and I was like, why is this not? And they're like, no, you can knee as much as you want. And I was like, you motherfuckers. So,
like changing the rules as you go.
Yeah, it was super. It was also like, it was held in this like venue where it's a bunch of like, I'm not going to say they're Chinese mobsters because they could be anything.
Yeah.
But that's what it looked like.
Yeah, there was probably crazy betting going on.
Yeah, just like betting and chain smoking and girls and like
yeah.
It wasn't the kind of place you protest if you don't like what's going on. Do what you got to do.
You might get a contract out on you.
So my old coach, the old gym owner hit me up a couple months ago. I was like, hey, Moses, where you at? And I was like, I'm in America, dog. Like, I'm not even in your country. He's like, oh, like the guy you beat, the gym owner, the guy you beat wants you to fight. Like they want you to fight. And I was like, well, I've been gone for a year, so that's not going to happen. And then one of my other boys, my training partners, he messaged me, he's like, dude, don't do it. Like they've hired some like professional killer to mess you up and restore Chinese honor.
Oh my God.
Yeah. They don't play around. Yeah. I mean, it's always been a thing in combat sports where it's like, you don't go to a foreign country and walk out with the belt. Like they're gonna like you beat their son.
Unless you're
gonna bring their big brother, right? Unless you're Marbury, then you get the keys to Beijing. Yeah. I get it. It's fight culture. That's how it is. But
damn. Yeah, but that's not the reason you went. You went just to go.
No, I wanted to train kung fu. I was doing kung fu.
You did.
Yeah,
okay.
So I was Wing Chun, and like I just wanted to experience the culture and eat food and see what it was like and stuff. But that was a cool opportunity to like get deep into things.
So when was the time to leave? When they put the hit out on you?
No, I just wanted to be home for family and stuff. Like my brother was doing his thing, and he had a show that I wanted to see, so I want to come back and see that. And like the air, I think might have been getting to me too. The air wasn't great over there. So,
yeah, right.
Like for health reasons and family, I was like, let me just go back and see what I can do with this book. Up. Yeah. Yep.
Damn, that is crazy.
It's a wild time, man.
Do you have any lasting injuries, or is it? Or did you come out all right?
No. I did okay.
Your typing fingers are all
right.
Yeah,
I did all right. I know. What do I really need?
Like, fuck, I can't get that A.
No, I didn't take too much damage. And it was, I mean, as weird and shady as it looked, they weren't letting people get murdered. Like, it wasn't blood sport.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I did all right.
Damn.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
Yeah, man.
Is there anything you wanna like plug or something, like another story coming out or say, what's up, agents? Check out my manuscript.
Yeah. If there's any
Simon and Schuster, what's good?
I mean, yeah, agents hit me up. I'm always down to work with you guys. Nothing to plug.
Or you can say, or else I'm gonna come kickbox the shit out of you.
I'll kick your door down and go to work. I mean, I'm hoping to have some projects done soon, so those will. We'll see what goes on there.
Cool. But definitely, send me that essay, or if you just send it out, let me know where it's published.
I'll send it to you. I can use eyes on it.
I am obsessed with Yuval, man. That dude is.
He's a smart guy.
He's on another level.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay, that's it for today's episode. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and review on whichever platform you're listening. You can get in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Animal Riot Press, or through our website, animalriotpress.com. This has been the 27th episode of the Animal Riot Podcast with your host, Brian Birnbaum, and featuring Moses Utomi. Transcripts for our deaf and hard of hearing animals are provided by Jonathan Kay, and we are produced by me, Katie Rainey. See you later, you filthy animals.
Yes, sir, it's the burn. Bombing on y'all and getting gully as the fern. I don't know much about